Welcome to Workers Education and Labor Studies again, and this is lecture 2. My name is Joseph Watuleke, your instructor. In this lecture, we are going to look at the specific objectives of workers education. You remember, in the previous lecture, we looked at the meaning and terminologies in workers education, where we looked at what a worker is, we looked at labor education, labor studies, and workers education. And we also went ahead to look at the objectives of workers education. But here we go specifically to what workers education aims to achieve. There are basically 4 immediate objectives which will probably be in minds of workers educators in planning their overall programs. And what are these objectives? First is to improve their students' ability to handle the tools of study and social action. The second is to arouse and strengthen the interest in trade unionism. And the third, as a natural sequence, to give workers a better understanding of labor problems, including their political, economic, and social implications. And the fourth is to equip trade unionists. These include the officers and rank and file members with livelihood skills and appropriate positive attitudes for social responsibility. And this objective entails equipping the workers with basic knowledge in income generation such that they can strengthen their organizations financially. In that case, how does workers' education differ from the general and broader concept of adult education? Here we look at the features that distinguish workers' education from adult education generally. One of the features is that workers' education is varied and varying from place to place and from time to time, meaning that workers' education in one organization may not be the same in another organization, and that depends on the needs and the time when it is needed. The second feature is that workers' education must be education of workers for workers' needs. And if it is to succeed, it must be supported by workers and their organizations. And that means that the needs to be addressed in workers' education must come from the workers themselves and not from the expert point of view to determine what should be trained to the workers. And the third feature is that workers' education must aim primarily at an understanding of labor, social and economic problems of direct interest to workers and their organizations. And the fourth feature is that workers' education must help workers and their leaders to assume more industrial, civic, and social responsibility. And that is where you are going to find the aspect of industrial action, strikes, and workers laying down their tools when they feel they are unfairly treated by their employers. Okay, now let us look at the tasks of workers' education. What should workers' education do in this case for the workers? Workers' education performs a number of tasks, and these include, but not limited to, the following. First, workers' education should arouse the interest of workers in education and further studies. As you may be aware, many workers, when they get a job, they tend not to have willingness to go for further studies. Some fear for their jobs, and others feel they are now too old to go back to school. But through workers' education, the workers' interests can be aroused to go for further studies and also upgrade in their careers. The second main task should be maintaining such generated interests. After arousing the interests of the workers, it is very important that opportunities and alternatives are found and presented to the workers to maintain such kind of interests such that they can advance into their education. And the fourth is broadening the interests of the workers into education. In other words, workers' education is meant to ensure that workers understand that education is not limited in a particular specialization. As a worker, they can become multi-skilled, multitasked, and also multi-field in the way they can learn a number of things through this kind of education. And the fourth is strengthening the interests and motivating the workers to study and continue studying. In other words, workers' education should ensure that when workers start studying, they are motivated to keep it on. And this brings in the concept of lifelong learning, which of course is the basis for our school, the School of Distance and Lifelong Learning. In that case, we shall end this lecture here. Thank you for listening and watching, and we shall continue discussions on the discussion forum to look more into what workers' education should do. Thank you. See you in the next lecture.